So after months of inaction earlier this year, Justin Trudeau did close the borders in response to the coronavirus crisis. However, since that period of time, he really hasn't had any other plan to deal with the coronavirus. And there has been a lot of human cost to that lack of action. And I'm joined today by my friend Sarah Campbell, who has been living a very intimate story. You're really, to me, the face of some of this lack of action. And I was just hoping that you could share with people a bit of your story, what's happened over the last few months with you, and then we can talk about what you're asking the government for.
Absolutely. So the border closures have affected many, many families, and I am not immune from that. My fiance is from England. We met over a year ago and got engaged in January of this year, and planned for a June 27th wedding. However, when the border closures happened, for good reason, we slowly realized that we were going to have to postpone our wedding and my eventual move to the UK. However, it was right about in the middle of May, when we were starting to make plans for me to just fly to the UK, because the UK never closed their borders, that I found a lump on the side of my neck. And usually lumps and bumps are nothing to worry about, but it didn't go away. So, I asked my doctor, and all of this stuff happened over the phone because of COVID restrictions. Eventually, it came down to having the lump biopsied at the end of June. So it was actually 2 days before what should have been my wedding day that I had to have a biopsy done. And she told me it would be 2 to 3 weeks for results. She called me after just a week. And usually when they call you that fast, it's not good news. And unfortunately for my case, it was bad news as well. So she told me, unfortunately, it's thyroid cancer, completely unexpected. And the course of treatment was to have a really major surgery and then a form of radiation called radioactive iodine therapy. So I knew I was going to be stuck in Canada for quite some time. And, this is at the very beginning of July. We'd already been asking the government to provide some kind of exemption, because there's a lot of, committed partners and families that were torn apart by these border closures. And, from the June 8th exemption, which was great, but it was very, very narrow. And a lot of us don't qualify for things like common law.
Sure. I'm just going to stop you right there, just for people who are listening, to give a bit of a background on what we're talking about. So when the borders were initially closed, there was no exemption for travel. So, there are tens of thousands of people, maybe more than that, in Canada who have spouses or close family members in other parts of the world, and the government did not provide exemptions for family members to reunite, even under quarantine rules. So while everybody was supporting the border measures, there should have been some thought given to the practical realities of how this could be managed. And I think it wasn't until the middle of June that the government budged and said that they would provide exemptions, that people could enter still under quarantine rules in the middle of June. But that was only for people that had a marriage certificate. And that posed problems for a wide variety of people like yourself, who, especially you're going through this really difficult medical treatment, and you're in a committed relationship, you just want to be with your partner, but they weren't recognizing your relationship.
Yeah, so there was two parts to it. Number one, Jacob was not considered my family, my immediate family, according to the Canadian government, despite the fact that we should have been married on June 27th. That seemed to be a bit irrelevant to them. As well as his travel would be considered non-essential, which is what I was told. They put visiting a fiance in the same category as tourism and recreation and sightseeing, which is a little bit painful for me even to say now, because, how is sightseeing the same as my fiance coming to be with me as I go through cancer treatment? But that's what I've been told over and over again. So it's been very, very frustrating. I haven't seen Jacob in 7.5 months. So.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I really feel for you to not have your partner beside you as you go through this really difficult time. And I think what most people need to know in your circumstance as well is that in your advocacy, you said you've been very clear that like you support the border measures, but that the government should be using, you know, like they should be thinking about ways to deal with compassionate situations like yours, and they haven't done that to date. Now you've written, I believe it's 100 letters, right, to Bill Blair?
104.
104. So I understand that you've actually sent me your 100th for me to personally deliver to him. You know, how does it make you feel to not be responded to by the government in a situation like this?
Oh my gosh, it is so frustrating. It's, you know, at first I wrote emails like everyone else, but they didn't reply to my emails.
Right.
And so that's when I took matters literally into my own hands and decided to start this letter writing campaign. So I handwrite these letters. I'm not typing them up. I'm not printing them off. I'm handwriting them every single day. And my hope for that was that, you know, the government would see the effort that I was going to. You know, this isn't a person who's just kind of clicking a send all button on an email. This is serious effort. So this matters to me. And, you know, I'm a Canadian citizen. I'm a voting, law-abiding Canadian citizen. And I thought, for sure, once they see the effort that I'm going to about this, you know, regarding this issue, that they'll respond to me. I was wrong.
Yeah, I noticed this morning that Bill Blair's chief of staff tweeted that they baked a loaf of bread.
Yep.
So I'm sure you felt really great about seeing that after seeing your letters ignored over 100 times. So I think, like, again, for people who are watching my channel and have been following this case, again, you're part of this group, Faces of Advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
I've met the leader. He and everybody else is part of this group is saying, look, we support border measures. We want to prevent the spread of COVID-19. But like, why hasn't the government dealt with a plan beyond these draconian measures after 7 months so that there can be some hope? And I mean, like, the reality is beyond your situation. I've heard from so many people, even just in my community, you know, just saying like, okay, for example, I'm pushing the government today that they have refused to look or at least do feasibility studies on rapid COVID testing or at-home testing, or feasibility studies on pre and post arrival testing, because people, like, a lot of people can't afford to continue to be at home in quarantine, right? I know you and the group have been asking for this exemption or this change to the definition of family so that it's not just a married spouse. There's also, you know, discriminatory elements there with regard to the LGBT community. If you're married, if you're part of that community and you are in a relationship with somebody who's in an area where outing themselves could cause harm, it's discriminatory. And also just getting clarity on the rules, right? I know that the order in council that governs travel back and forth and some of the quarantine requirements is very vague. How do, like, I guess what I would really like for you to share, in case this person who made the sourdough bread this morning is watching this, how does that lack of clarity and like sort of lack of hope, how has that affected you? Like how does, like, I mean, you're going through this incredibly emotional and physical experience with your treatment. How, like, can you just tell people, or maybe tell Bill Blair, how this makes you feel?
Oh gosh, you know, when somebody asks me, "Oh, how are you doing today?" I struggle to find the words to describe how I'm actually doing. It's one thing to be separated from your partner for 7.5 months with no end. It's indefinite at this point still. It's you know, it's one thing to have to postpone your wedding. Many brides have had to do that because of COVID-19. But to add on top of that, fighting cancer, and not only fighting cancer, but having to fight just to have my fiance by my side. I mean, some days I honestly don't know what keeps me going, what keeps me putting one foot in front of the other. It's devastating. It's heartbreaking. It's frustrating. I'm angry, but I have no energy to be angry because I'm in the middle of treatment. You know, this is something that I should not have to be fighting for. This is something that people should be listening to me, that action should be being taken. And it's mind-boggling to me that, there's been so little response. And when there is response, it's often quite apathetic. The Zeta,
it's bureaucratic. It's
it
ridiculous.
is. Yeah, but I mean,
Sarah, I'm listening to you, and I just, you're like, I don't have the energy to be angry. And I just want to say I'm angry for you. And I'm sure that everybody who is watching this is angry for you. This is ridiculous. I don't want you to feel like you're alone. We will fight for you. And, if Bill Blair is watching this, I hope he is. It's been 7 months. Why aren't you doing your job? We've watched Health Canada, like Patty Hyju, like flip-flop on all of these issues. After 7 months, the only response should not be, sorry, Sarah, you can't see your fiance. It should be a plan to deal with the pandemic, but at the same time, deal with the human realities of people like yourself. There's mental health issues. Like, I find it completely ridiculous that the government is just saying, like, oh, well, we just have to shut the economy down again. Like, people can't afford that, right? And I mean, I've been very, out of respect for my family, quiet about my own personal situation. But, I am in a situation where, through custody arrangements with stepchildren and other ailing family members and health concerns for my spouse, it is impractical for us. Like, I probably won't see my spouse until next year. I don't know when I'm going to see him again. And that's hard. I mean, and I don't have the I have a lot of privilege that other Canadians don't, and I don't have the situation that you have right now. I don't understand where the empathy is at with this government. I don't understand why it is so hard for Bill Blair. Like literally, Sarah, he could have sat down in a day and been like, okay, how do we do an attestation or some sort of proof of relationship system to allow you to reunite, and to tell you that it is non-essential for you to be with your spouse during your treatment is absolutely ridiculous. And the trick with governing is that, yes, we're in the middle of a pandemic, we want to prevent the spread of COVID, that has to be number one, but there's everything else too, and we can't lose sight of that and of your situation. So I wanted to give you a chance to tell your story. I hope that Ms. Sourdough, Mr. Sourdough Bread is watching today. They need to come out and they need to have action, and we will press them on this. I will give him that letter, and it won't be pretty for him. It won't, Sarah. This is ridiculous.
Thank you.
It needs to be listened. So we want you, everybody who's watching this wants to give you our energy, that you need to focus on getting better. You need to focus on your love for your spouse, and we will fight your fight, and we will make sure that this government starts to act and get its act together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle.
Together today. Working hard for you. Have a great day.